This time around, for a number of reasons, there are fewer participants on the EU side. Therefore, I will take the liberty, with your permission, to make up a little bit for this deficit in my address. I have 3 points to make. First, Belarus is lucky to have EU as a close neighbor, and we should not waste time if we want to realize the potential of our cooperation and modernization. Second, the EU and Belarus have to change and modernize if we want to improve the well-being of our people and leave a better world for future generations. And third, Belarus can trust the EU when we say that we want and can help Belarus to modernize. Allow me to expand on these 3 points. As regards the reliability of the EU as a good neighbor, the EU is unique in the history of mankind. It is a project of political, economic and legal integration of countries who waged war ever since coming into existence more than 1,000 years ago. By all historical standards, the EU is a huge success story, and this was recognized last year by the Nobel Committee. The EU has changed the way nations think about security. We offer a new model of politics under which security for all is guaranteed by working together. This model is slowly but surely outclassing the old traditions of balance of power politics and non-interference in internal affairs. The EU's success grew from an embryo of just 6 countries that emerged from the horrors of the World War II. Soon it will include 28 member states, as Croatia will join on the 1st of July. 5 more countries have the candidate status and 3 more are potential candidates. Ours is an economic and political union of more than 500 million and potentially of more than 600 million people, the bigger part of Europe. Since the end of the Cold War, the European Union has transformed much of its neighborhood by reducing ethnic conflicts, strengthening the rule of law, and developing economies from the Baltic to the Balkans. Globally, many of the rules and institutions that keep markets open and regulate world trade were created by the European Union. The EU remains the largest single economy in the world. The EU's GDP per capita in purchasing power terms is nearly 4 times that of such emerging economic giant as China, 3 times Brazil's, and nearly 9 times India's. Yes, the European Union now faces the biggest crisis in its history. But at the same time, our economy in many ways stands on a surer footing than many other developed economies. Our combined government deficit as a share of GDP this year will be below 3%. Gross government debt as a percentage of GDP is around the same as in the United States and much lower than that in Japan. Such EU member states as Finland, the Netherlands, Germany, Britain and Sweden are among the world's 10 most competitive economies. China ranks the 29th. Our current trade account is roughly in balance with the rest of the world. The economic crisis has unleashed a wave of transformation in European economies, including painful fiscal consolidation, structural changes, and sweeping reforms in economic governance. Despite doomsday scenarios, not a single country left the Eurozone. On the contrary, the country that I come from, Latvia, plans to join it in January next year, and there are others who share this aspiration. There is an excitingly lively debate going on where we want to be in 10, 20, 30 years' time. European unity and integration, our vast single market, our single currency equip us with the strength to embrace globalization. There is going to have to be much closer economic integration in Europe. We work hard on it. I have no doubt that Europe will emerge from this crisis stronger, bigger, and more confident than ever before. And I think Belarus should be happy to have such a neighbor across the border. This year could be a very important year for the Eastern Partnership of European Union, of which Belarus is a member. At the Vilnius Summit in November, we are aiming at an association agreement with Ukraine and initialing similar agreements with Moldova, Georgia, and Armenia. We also expect the conclusion of visa facilitation and readmission agreements with Armenia and Azerbaijan. During the upcoming Lithuanian presidency, we want to reach an agreement on the Eastern Partnership transport network and agree a list of priority projects which can tangibly demonstrate the Eastern Partnership's goal of bringing the EU and its partners closer together. Eastern Partnership will support those who seek a closer relationship with the European Union, those who pursue and implement genuine reforms and uphold shared values. It can be a powerful instrument for modernization. The EU championed regional integration and regional economic and political integration decades ago. Now the rest of the world is following. The most recent example being the nascent Eurasian Economic Union. Wise people say that integration has become a prerequisite for independence. We have of course noted that Belarus has chosen to integrate with Russia and Kazakhstan and perhaps some Central Asian countries into the Customs Union, the Single Economic Space, and the Eurasian Economic Union. Belarus will be facing new competitive pressures during this integration process, and the EU could be a close and indispensable partner in helping you to calibrate your policies. We wish Belarus luck in your economic integration. We are keen to see our neighbors liberalize their trade, strengthen their economies, and also improve relationships with Russia, which is our strategic partner. As you know well, we can only make legally binding agreements with partners that are in charge of their external trade policies. But this does not preclude us from discussing some areas of interaction without putting into question the content of the association agreements with our Eastern partners. In other words, we are very pragmatic. We made an offer to strengthen contacts between the European Commission and Eurasian Economic Union on some of the most important areas, such as the regulatory frameworks and others, so that they could become compatible. In our view, the choice Belarus supposedly has to make between East and West is a false one. We see no place for new dividing walls in Europe. Nobody wants it, nobody needs it anymore. Each year we have regular high-level meetings with Russia where we frankly discuss all issues of concern and manage to solve some of them. We have a successful partnership for modernization program. 3 months ago, members of the European Commission met the Russian government in Moscow, and last week there was the EU-Russia summit in Yekaterinburg. We are, broadly speaking, all in the same river, even if in different boats. As to the modernization, my second main point is that we have the opportunity and compelling reasons to modernize together. The world around us is changing ever more rapidly, and new challenges, be it poverty, economic instability, migration, climate change, conflict, terrorism, or disease, will test our mettle again and again. Countries and regions that want to shape and benefit from dynamic future have no choice but to change, modernize, and cooperate. We have an obligation to leave a better place for future generations. Many people whom I meet here and in Brussels are impressed with Belarus's achievements in the past decade. At the same time, many of them believe that Belarus must modernize to avoid stagnation in socio-economic and political development. There are some worrying developments in the economy and society. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said that if you don't change direction, you may end up where you are heading to. He also argued that minimizing the role of government and letting individuals develop spontaneously would best achieve social and economic harmony. We should ask ourselves, both in Europe and in Belarus, whether our current policies, in practical terms, are consistent with our vision of the future. I strongly believe that we all share the vision of Europe that is peaceful and prosperous. Deep inside, we all want Europe where human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, the respect for human rights, social justice, and the well-being of the people are not empty words but daily reality. One cannot modernize in isolation. Each individual European country can only modernize and prosper if Europe as a whole is doing well. The challenges we are facing are unconstrained by our borders. One of the biggest tests of our time is the ability to build partnerships and institutions for cooperation that can meet the challenge. Nowadays, sovereignty entails obligations and duties towards other states as well as towards one's own citizens. The EU is changing fast. Belarus should not be afraid of change too. Modernization is a difficult task that requires cooperation on all sides, and this is especially true when we speak about neighbors. And in this regard, my third and last point is that Belarus can trust the European Union when we say that we want and can help Belarus to modernize. Belarus is an integral part of the European heritage and the European community of nations. The EU wishes to share with its neighbors the prosperity, stability, and security. To support our neighbors, the EU offers political, economic, and trade opportunities, as well as technical and financial assistance to countries which respect human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. These are values to which Belarus has already committed itself on its own free will as a member of the United Nations, OSCE, and other organizations. Even during the most difficult period of relations last year, we continued our policy of critical engagement. Belarus is a member of the Eastern Partnership project. The EU has continued supporting the Belarusian society via projects in areas such as energy, environment, food safety, regional and local development, higher education, as well as on civil society, media, and the social domain. True, Belarus has up to now received far less EU assistance than her neighbors. However, this situation would change if the Belarusian government takes the decisions expected by the EU and makes significant steps towards reform. We see growing demand for reform inside Belarus. We see more Belarusians visiting the European Union, studying and doing business. 2 years ago, we offered Belarus to start negotiations on visa facilitation and readmission to the benefit of the population. Even without progress in this area for the time being, the demand for Schengen visas in Belarus is growing at an unprecedented pace. Recently, we and Belarus have made a number of steps to improve our diplomatic communication. We have seen some positive steps on Belarus's side, and we understand that they were not easy to take. Visits from the Council of Europe, from OSCE, ODIHR, the OSCE representative on freedom of the media, as well as consultations in Brussels and with some EU member states were some of these steps. We expect this trend to continue. It allows to exchange opinions and better understand each other. We are honestly seeking ways to enhance dialogue with the Belarusian authorities. A number of interesting proposals have been made in a special report, which is now under discussion in the European Parliament. The EU could do much more for Belarus, but this potential for cooperation can only be unlocked if Belarus takes important steps that are in her own best interest. As Belarus resumes a movement in direction of these steps, we are available to discuss reforms that could ensure sustainable development of economy and society and contribute to regional and global stability. Our return to dialogue can go hand in hand with open discussions within Belarus and on how to solve specific problems that the country is now facing. We have and will have a number of ongoing sectoral dialogues with the Belarusian government in the areas such as macroeconomic policy, energy and environment. These sectoral dialogues could be enhanced also through the ongoing dialogue on modernization, which allows to exchange the expertise of participants, establish contacts between Belarusian experts and those of the EU, as well as foster research and discussions on modernization topics. This could help us all to understand better what the modernization needs for Belarus are and how we could support them. From the very beginning, the intention of the dialogue, the intention of creating this dialogue was that it would feed into a future joint EU-Belarus action plan, touching on a wide range of areas of cooperation, which could be elaborated when political circumstances allow it. This action plan could serve as a roadmap towards a partnership and cooperation agreement. I would like to stress that it is entirely up to the Belarusians if they want to use this opportunity to foster stability and prosperity by modernization. I am optimistic because I see that the Belarusian leadership, the official circles and the state media speak about modernization more and more often. Also, I believe that Belarus has the strength and the wisdom to turn a new page in our relations. We diplomats lay bridges between nations. You scientists advance knowledge and understanding so that these bridges act as solid bulwarks of positive exchange and cooperation. I sincerely hope that today's conference will serve these purposes well. Today, in this great building of Academy of Sciences, I encourage you to pursue a frank debate in a truly scientific spirit. Thank you for your attention. I wish you all a fruitful work.